So earlier today, we reported on a potential rumor in Prime News. The rumor dealt with Star Fox Grand Prix, a supposed racing game being made by Retro Studios. Now, I didn't talk a lot about it because at the time of reporting, every single place that had been reporting on it was referencing a Reddit post that was referencing a deleted tweet by Liam Robertson. And Liam Robertson at the time passed it off as trolling. Now, that doesn't mean that Liam Robertson wasn't actually leaking something legit, but it means he might have jumped the gun and maybe even gotten a little bit of trouble with his sources for doing that. And I'm only saying that because, as dismissive as I was of this news in Prime News, something has happened since I edited and put up that video. Tom Phillips, who is a professional media news editor at Eurogamer.net, decided to write an article about this as well. Not because he necessarily thinks that everything is true, but because Eurogamer has their own independent sources that are verifying this. Now, here's some exact details that he gives. He says the leaks appeared online over the weekend on Reddit and 4chan, and then were reported this morning by multiple gaming sites and blogs. And he says, so what do we believe? Well, as improbable as Retro making a Star Fox Racing spin-off may sound, Eurogamer sources have heard similar. Now, to go back over the details that were put up on Reddit about this by Das Vergeben, he says it will have an adventure mode of some kind, think Diddy Kong Racing, and there will be some boss fights and a hub world like it too, and it's called Star Fox Grand Prix. Now, Tom Phillips says that they have not heard of that name, and they don't know what those, if that is an accurate or final name, but the other details talked about there in terms of an adventure mode similar to Diddy Kong Racing and boss fights in a hub world line up with what they have heard from their independent sources that have nothing to do with what the rest of these people are reporting on. And then he goes on to say the Star Fox series is traditionally a space and sometimes land-based vehicle shooter, although it has dabbled in various other genres before. There was a logo, obviously, that went up. You guys are probably seeing it already about Star Fox Grand Prix. But again, that doesn't mean that this name is reliable. It doesn't mean that there isn't some fakeness connected to how this is being presented. But yeah, this is a very interesting thing. Now we can have a conversation on this, because before, here's the thing. I trust Eurogamer a hell of a lot more than 4chan and Liam Robertson even more than him. I trust Eurogamer because, again, they had a bunch of stuff right on Switch. It was more so through their subset of Digital Foundry. But even then, Tom Phillips has a pretty good track record with this stuff in terms of his reporting at Eurogamer, from what I can tell based on his history. So I'm going to look at this as now we have something interesting to approach, because for starters, I think some people think it's a little bit ironic to have a Star Fox Racing game compared to Diddy Kong Racing and also some F-Zero comparisons, when F-Zero is a standalone racing game that still doesn't have a sequel after how many years now has it been since the last one? And that Diddy Kong Racing hasn't had a sequel yet since how many years has it been since the last one? So, to take Star Fox, a game that, a franchise really, that doesn't dabble in racing, and have it sound like it's similar to other racing titles that Nintendo has had in the past is very, very interesting. Of course, boss fights and all that stuff notwithstanding, we don't know what that's going to be like. But yeah, this is very interesting to me. It's a little disappointing if true, because that means my dream of Retro Studios finally being able to create their own IP is dead for now. I keep waiting for Nintendo to let them do that. However, that doesn't mean that this can't be great. Now, we know Star Fox Zero was received with, let's call it, mixed reactions. There are some people that legitimately liked it, and the co-op was admittedly fun, but, there's a lot of people that were kind of longing for Star Fox to be what it used to be, even during the adventure days, let alone Star Fox 64. But whatever that case may be, this is a completely new direction. It can fit because it's always been like an on-rail shooter, so an on-rails type racing game does make a little bit of sense for the franchise in some respects, especially if it has that Diddy Kong mode, where you're talking about adventure mode with boss fights in a hub world. Like, if it's done correctly, that could be fantastic. I'm pretty excited about this, if I'm being honest. Again, I would rather have a new IP out of Retro, but if they are going to, dabble in another Nintendo IP, why not Star Fox? And not just Star Fox, but do something unique with it. Because if you remember right, when they did Metroid Prime was a 180 turn from what Metroid had been in terms of its presentation, its style, bringing it fully into 3D with a first-person perspective. Like, this wasn't something that we'd even think was possible in a Metroid game back when Metroid Prime came out, and they did it, and they did it successfully. Now, we obviously know with Country Returns and Tropical Freeze, there was a bit of trying something new, while mostly sticking to the core of what made the Country series so beloved by fans. But this is an interesting take because it gives Retro a chance to put their own unique stamp on Star Fox. And Nintendo themselves doesn't really have a lot of racers. It's Mario Kart and nothing. And it's weird because back when Mario Kart was even huge, like back in the 90s and early 2000s, Nintendo still had the F-Zeros. It had the wave races of the world. It had the Diddy Kong racing. Like, I've heard some fans talk about how they don't think this is true because it would cannibalize sales of Mario Kart or a future Mario Kart 9, or that Mario Kart 9 would eventually cannibalize sales of this. But does it really have to be that way, right? Like, does that need to be a reality that exists? Did we really think that Mario Kart was being held back by F-Zero and Diddy Kong Racing back in the day? So why would Mario Kart today be held back by Star Fox Racing? Or conversely, why would Star Fox Racing be held back from Mario Kart 9? It sounds like they can be completely different things, especially since, like, there's no such thing as an adventure mode in Mario Kart with, like, a grand story and boss fights. Like, that's not... There's enough that can differentiate this between an F-Zero, maybe, style in terms of the speed, although that has happened a little bit in Mario Kart today. The adventure mode, the boss fights, the hubs. Like, there's some cool things they could do with this beyond the typical, you just race against a bunch of people online, and maybe you pew each other or whatever the case may be, to knock each other out of the race. Or there's actually some old racing games, I can't remember the name of them, that I used to play on PC, where the cars would have like different guns and upgrades you can get for the guns, and like you could shoot at other cars in front of you. A similar, something similar to that in space would be kind of cool. But I'm pretty excited. If this is legit, which again, we're talking about a rumor. We have no idea. Take it with a grain of salt. Eurogamer gets some things right. They get some things wrong. I would argue they're more reliable than where these leaks are all in general coming from. But yeah. I mean, let me know what you guys actually think about this. Are you guys excited by the prospect of this? Now, remember, the Grand Prix name is a separate thing from what Tom Phillips is saying. It might be called, Grand Prix, or it might not be. But what is for certain, at least from Eurogamer's perspective, is that a racing Star Fox game is apparently coming according to their sources. And the information about it having an adventure mode similar to Diddy Kong Racing with bosses and a hub is apparently like a thing that their sources are telling them as well. So no, their sources are not saying Grand Prix. Other people are reporting Grand Prix. Even if it's not called Grand Prix and it's called something else, if it's any sort of Star Fox racing game, then we have to consider these rumors as legit. But again, this is something that if we're finding out information about it now, it must be getting unveiled at E3. And I really apologize if you feel like this spoils some things for you for maybe a surprise game. But you know what? Even if this is happening at E3, the Star Fox Racing game, we have no idea what this... Like me even conceptualizing what a Star Fox Racing game would look like is probably going to fall 20 billion times short of what the Star Fox Racing game, if this is true and unveiled at E3, actually is. And it's Retro Studios. I think, if anything, they have earned the benefit of the doubt that this is going to be pretty good. They handled the Metroid series almost perfectly to a T with a brand new direction. I'd argue they handled the Donkey Kong Country series with extreme respect to the past and the future. And I honestly think that they are if they're working on this Star Fox racing game, that they are going to handle it with the utmost respect. And think about the variety that they've handled now, right? You've had that single-player, closed-off world in Metroid with a shooter that they've done. They've had the 2D side-scrolling style, platforming excellence, leading up to Tropical Freeze. And now a unique take on racing for Star Fox. Like, is there anything Retro Studios can't do? Well, besides be allowed to work on their own IP. Come on, Nintendo. I think they've earned that right to at least have a side project, right? Don't just keep your new IP creations coming out of Japan. Let Retro Studios have a side team working on something fresh. Like, have a Western, like don't be afraid of creating a Western IP. Like, actually in the West. Anyways, folks, I'm Nathaniel Robojets from Nintendo Prime. You guys let me know what you think about this rumor down in the comments below now that we have new information to take this more seriously. Does this new information change how you think? Or are you still going to go with, you know what, I'm on Team Fake or I'm on Team Real? Let me guys know down in the comments below. I love you guys, and I will see you tomorrow.